The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Hello and welcome to mini episode 388 of Real Life Ghost Stories, and I have 3 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 6th of August 2024, and story number 1 comes from David. We moved into our house in March of 2021. It is 3 cottages turned into one house. We love it. It has a lot of interesting features. One of them is the stairway to the upstairs. It, like the wooden flooring, is reclaimed from an old chapel. It is very ornate. I just imagine how many people have held on to the banister over the years. The conversion was done in 1979, but the house was built around 1600. When we bought the house, we asked the previous owners if they had ever experienced anything weird or spooky. They said they had never felt anything strange. They lied. I don't mind, we probably would have bought the house anyway, and we are friends with them now, but they did not tell the truth. Our village has a population of about 500. We now find that our house is considered the most haunted in the village. It is so weird, but most people here believe in ghosts. My neighbour regularly gets things thrown around the house. My wife doesn't believe in ghosts, but I do. You related my previous story during your 31 Days of Terror 2023, day 27. I don't know why she doesn't believe, because she has a pretty good reason to do so. I will expand upon her experience later, but she doesn't want to believe, as she is worried this will attract them. It's too late for that. The villagers have grown up here and remember sleeping overnight here when they were kids. Some of them say they would never come in here again from what they experienced. It is thought that the spirits are children, like the ones widely acknowledged to be haunting the only pub in the village. But enough history. Here is what we have experienced. Our upstairs hallway is lit by lights that are a bit like chandeliers, but not as grand. One morning I got up and found that one of the lights was disassembled, and all of the parts were lying on the floor beneath. It was quite a job putting it back together, I can tell you. Our internal doors of our house are very old and do not have modern doorknobs. The doors are very basic, wooden planks all fabricated into doors. I don't do them any justice with such a description, but they are very nice and they suit the place, so I wouldn't change them. The door latches are the sort you would find on garden gates. One side is a handle with a thumb thingy you squeeze down on. This lifts a lever out of a bracket on the other side to allow you to open the door. There is a little metal device which will block the lever from lifting, thus locking the door if required. The room is a guest room which we don't use. We always leave the door open. One morning I found the door closed. I tried to open it and it was locked. To further complicate things, the little locking tab was very stiff. I had previously tried the lock but was unable to move the tab. Now the door is locked. So I tried and tried to open the door without success. My wife stopped me from breaking the door down by tenaciously trying the mechanism, and after 20 minutes or so she opened it. The little tab was almost immovable. I have since disabled the lock on that door and on any others that had the same lock. That room features in another occurrence. My slippers disappeared from my bedside one morning. I take them off when I get into bed at night and they are always waiting for me in the morning. One morning they were gone. I looked and looked for them, as did my wife. No luck at all. It was probably a week or so later that I went into the room discussed above. I wasn't looking, but I found my slippers. They were hanging up on the back of the door on some clothes hooks. Now, I would never hang my slippers up on the back of the door. Who would? I got them back, but what the fuck? Now, this next occurrence can probably be argued away and not be considered spooky, but I lived it, and it felt creepy. It was around midnight and I was alone in the kitchen. I couldn't sleep. I was just sitting there at the table looking at my computer, when all of a sudden the loudest crack erupted in the room. It sounded electrical, but I could not find any source. It actually made my ears ring for a while. Again, some will find a logical explanation, but I can't. On January the 2nd, 2023, I slipped on some ice and fell onto my back, and I broke my back. I was bedridden until May. The pain was excruciating. No description would do justice to the agony. Seriously, if I could have died, I would have welcomed it. But I got better. My little dog Bentley was unbelievably loyal. He rarely left my side. Sadly, he died last week. My eyes are teary as I type this. Anyway, it was so weird. It was a Saturday morning. I was lying on my stomach, wide awake, when suddenly I felt and heard a strong slap to my back. It didn't actually hurt, but it shocked me. I thought it was my wife, but she was nowhere near. By then, I realised I must be dealing with a spirit or two, so I kindly asked it to stop. It hasn't happened since. Eventually, I was mobile again. Now this I find really weird. I made myself some toast one morning. The first slice went into the toaster just fine. But the second slice wouldn't go in. It was being blocked by something. I looked into the toaster only to find my reading glasses were in there. Nothing has happened in the last couple of months. Maybe because I acknowledge whatever spirits may live with us. They don't scare me. Maybe, probably, I am weird. But I feel that they must feel that this is their home, like we do, so I just leave them alone. And if they are children, I kind of feel a bit protective of them. Weird, I know. There are reasons as to why my wife should believe in spirits. When we first moved here, one night my wife looked out the back of our property. In a field there is a large house. It was all lit up. She wondered who lived there. One day we went for a walk and had a look at the house, and it is a mere shell of a house. The upper floor has collapsed and there is quite a mature tree growing inside it, projected up through what would have been the roof. She told me that she had seen it lit up recently. Not like campers or anything, just fully lit up like a modern house. My villager friends tell me the house is probably from about 1400 and many people have seen it lit up. Again, my wife is very sceptical about ghosts, etc. However, one night she took off her gold bangles and put them on the dresser. There were 6 of them. The next morning they were gone. She found them one by one all over the house. Before I related my wife's experience, I said things had gone quiet here, but something new happened today. A couple of weeks ago, I lost one of the earbuds I used to listen to things. I fell asleep with them in. I found one, but the other was gone. I looked and looked and looked, but couldn't find it. But today, I found the little case the buds reside in placed neatly on my bedside table. The lost bud was back in there. So I thanked them and, weird, I know, smiled, feeling that I have some little friends. Oh, David, this is such a great, series of little events. I love it. And I do love old style renovations, like your house was built around 1600. And I love that they've reclaimed wood from the old chapel, that your staircase is from the old chapel. I really do think that is an amazing thing to do, but no wonder it's haunted. And I kind of love that you live in the haunted house in the village. What a claim to fame. And I do think the events, the spooky things that have happened in your house are really interesting. Like the kind of chandelier type lights being disassembled and taken apart, and you had like a job putting them back together. That feels so specific and pointed. And it also feels really attention seeking. Like there was no way you weren't going to see and react to that, and it wasn't going to make your life, a little bit difficult. And it's the same thing with like hiding your slippers and finding them in the other room hanging on the back of the door, and the door being locked, and your glasses going missing and finding them in the toaster. Like they're all silly, like, I don't know, childish things to do. And I kind of understand why you feel like you've got little pals, more so than it being really terrifying. It really does feel like kids who are going through that like prank stage. And you know what it is? I also understand your wife's reticence to say, yes, I believe in ghosts, because the minute you say, I believe in this, you're kind of admitting that it's really happening. And I totally get not wanting to do that. But again, like all of her bangles going missing and being found in different parts of the house, very much childlike energy. And we've had plenty of stories on the podcast about big manor houses that have either appeared from nowhere or, like in this instance, are all lit up at various times. I wonder if there's like rhyme or reason to the times or days or months that it is that the manor house lights up. That might be worth kind of investigating with other people that live in the village, that maybe there's a pattern to when the manor house lights up. What an absolutely fascinating house to live in.
This song goes out to my new best pal, PayPal. Now that I get 5% cash back with my PayPal debit card every month on the category I choose, my PayPal and I, we're going everywhere together because I want to pay with you everywhere. I pay with PayPal at the shoe store, the wind chime store, the .com store, all the stores. Oh, I don't just pay, PayPal.
Terms apply. See PayPal app. This card is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Inc.
Hey, true crime fans. Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. After all, ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free true crime. That's amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply. Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
And story number 2 comes from Walter. A friend suggested I write in to share these 2 stories. The first is my grandfather's experience. He died in 1998 and told me this story in the mid-80s. I still remember it though. As a young lad growing up in Harlem in the late 1920s, he was in bed one night and kept hearing voices in his head repeatedly telling him to go to the window, which he finally did. And from there he could see across the hall into his mother's room. And he saw a kind of bright cloud, he said, swirling around above his mum as she slept. And then it just kind of dissipated into the ceiling. He was scared and jumped back into his bed and hid under the covers, and I guess fell asleep eventually somehow. The next morning he finds his mother in the kitchen crying. and she tells him that she had just received a phone call telling her that her mother had passed away, her mother in Germany. The second ghost was my own experience. My job brought me, usually alone, into literally hundreds of buildings, every nook and cranny working on the wiring. And, well, being in so many buildings, you sometimes feel certain energy or energies in a place, present and past, I think. And sometimes in basements you see old abandoned kitchens and furniture. Being in so many flats over the years with so many different people, you really get a sense of the human condition. One time in an old 5-story walk-up, I was just finishing up with working in a little wiring box on a dusty basement wall by a boiler room. About 20 feet to my left, I saw a man walking along the far wall towards the rear of the basement. I called out hello, but he ignored or didn't hear me and just kept straight ahead. Then I noticed I could almost see through him and I got the chills. Maybe it was just the poor lighting down there. I packed up my few tools and was going to head out the way I came in, through a door that led to the sidewalk out front. But maybe that guy was heading to a door in the rear and might lead to a quicker way upstairs, so I went where he went, towards the back. But it was a dead end, and he was gone. There were no other doors. I checked thoroughly, and I got the chills again. I'm pretty sure that guy was a ghost. But worker bee me just kept it moving. Well, that first story is really interesting. It's almost like a harbinger of death kind of situation. So first of all, he's hearing these voices that are telling him to go to the window. And then he's seeing this like bright cloud swirling around above his mum. Like, is that the soul, if you want to call it a soul, the spirit, the consciousness of his grandmother coming to say goodbye, maybe, to her daughter? Because even if you said, I don't know, your granddad just had a really vivid dream, that's all it was. What a weird, vivid dream to have, and coincidentally on the night that his grandmother dies. Like, it's a very strange coincidence. And I'm making that point because a lot of people will say, you know, stories that happen at nighttime or stories that happen when somebody's in bed, they don't count because it's clearly a dream, or it's clearly sleep paralysis, or, you know, it's clearly some sort of waking dream, whatever it is. But it's very weird and coincidental, even if it was a dream. I do think there is a beauty, though, in the spirit, the entity, whatever you want to call it, of his grandmother passing through space and time from Germany to visit her daughter in the form of this beautiful, swirling, bright cloud-like thing. And as for the basement ghost, I mean, I appreciate the description of your job and getting into hundreds of buildings and being in every nook and cranny and seeing all sorts of corners of humanity that you probably didn't know existed. I mean, the nosy part of me is like, that is my dream job, although I wouldn't be able to wire anything because I'm not an electrician. I don't know if there's any jobs that involve people just going into other people's houses just to be nosy. I don't actually think there are. But I can imagine that also means that you get to feel a lot of energy and pick up on a lot of shit that's going on in various houses, both human and otherwise. And then to see this man who walks into a dead end and disappears in the basement. I know, like, clearly it sort of seems like it was like a residual energy. He wasn't meaning you any harm. You know, there was no sense of malice there, but it's still terrifying that you're there alone in that basement. And then you realise, shit, that was a dead end. He had nowhere to go and he's just disappeared. And check you out continuing to work, because I can tell you I wouldn't. And story number 3 comes from B. I grew up on a farm next to a cemetery that our family takes care of. My dad takes daily walks through it to visit his parents and to make sure nobody has disturbed it, as it's in the country and people are inconsiderate assholes. As a child, and whenever I came back to visit, I would go along with him on these morning walks. When I was little, the cemetery was about half the size, as they didn't need all the space. Just outside of the fencing, I would always see a tall shadow. At first I thought it was the trees, but as I grew up I could see that it was a tall, lanky man with overalls and a wide-brimmed straw hat. He never had any colour, just a black shadow, and always in the back corner, standing a little hunched over or walking back and forth. Nothing menacing or angry, just felt lost and ever present. Since my family doesn't talk about anything that is out of the ordinary, and I was known for my stellar imagination, I think I was around 7 or 8 at the time, I asked my father what was over in that general corner. He said, just outside the fence is where they buried the farmhands with no family or any hobo the farmers would find dead in their barns in the early days of settling the area. I would see this man, or at least feel him almost every time I went to visit, and give him a nod and wish him well and hoped that he would find peace. Years later, the cemetery needed to expand to the size that it is now. By doing so, they included the external cemetery, so everyone is now within the confines of the fenced-in area. A couple of years ago when I came back, I was about 35, I believe at that point, I noticed that he wasn't there anymore. I'm hopeful this is what brought him peace, and he's now happy wherever souls go. I've had a couple of other instances of feeling a presence, but one story my aunt shared with me a few years back is about my grandmother. She and her sister were incredibly close throughout their entire lives. One evening, my grandmother was working on something in her basement, and she heard footsteps on the level above and came to the top of the steps. The kids were in bed and her husband was outside, so it couldn't have been them. She felt her sister and called out her name, even though it was impossible for her to be there. The footsteps walked away and she knew immediately that she was gone from this world. A little while later, she got a call she knew she'd get. Her sister had died. She was heartbroken but grateful her sister came to see her one last time. I'm not sure if this is a gift, a fluke, or hereditary, as we don't discuss these things in my family. But I feel more souls the older I get, and I'm grateful they're mostly never menacing. They just seem to want acknowledgement. I'm not sure where or who to reach out to get a better understanding of it, as I always feel a bit crazy when it happens, so I don't tell many people. It does bring me a sense of comfort to see souls go on after their bodies die, knowing that there is more than this. I'm not entirely sure why, but I found that first story just really moving. And I guess if you spend your life believing something, so you believe in God in whatever context, and your belief dictates that when you die you should be buried in a graveyard in consecrated ground, and then you're not because of your social status, because you were living in poverty, you're buried outside of the graveyard. Christ, you'd be feeling like it's no wonder he was strolling up and down. Not strolling, that's not the right word. He was sort of pacing up and down, feeling really lost. And look, I've read of mice and men, okay? My knowledge of American history isn't great, but as far as I'm aware, roaming farmhands were pretty common, right? People would go from farm to farm, picking up work wherever they could get it. So I'd imagine like farmers finding men dead in their barns was probably like, I don't imagine it was an everyday occurrence, but I imagine it wasn't like ridiculously uncommon either. I think it just makes me really sad, and I really hope you're right. Like I hope that the expansion of the graveyard gave that spirit, that soul, that entity the peace that he needed. And your story about your grandmother and her sister, it's really heartbreaking. But it also makes me think, we talk a lot about closure and people who are still living getting closure from visitations, etc. But maybe there's a flip side to that. Maybe it gives the person who is deceased or who is dying, maybe it gives them closure. You know, maybe she got the option in death to go and see her sister one last time. And that's kind of a lovely thought too. And I'm going to be honest, like, I don't know anything about getting a better understanding of that gift. But I think it is a beautiful thing for you to be able to see that there is something more to this. Thank you so much for listening to today's mini episode. Thank you to David, Walter and B for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 6th of August 2024. If you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month you get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
1-800-Flowers.com is more than your birthday, anniversary, or just because gift-giving destination. We put our hearts into everything we do to help you celebrate all life's special occasions with friends and family. From our farmers and bakers, florists and makers, everything from 1-800-Flowers is made with love every step of the way, because we know that nothing is more important than delivering a smile. To learn more, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.